Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 202 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Really excited and pleased that you're with us today. Hope that your studies are going well. If you're a July 2018 bar taker, that means we're probably, as this episode is releasing, just about 40 days until the exam. 40 days, that sounds sort of biblical, doesn't it? Yeah, a lot can happen in 40 days, and if you're just getting underway with your studies, don't panic, you're okay, even if you're in a big box bar review. But definitely if you're in our course, you're just fine at 40 days out. Now, most of you that will be watching and listening to this podcast will probably be starting to turn your sights to the 2019 exams. We've got a lot of great information for you about that today. But first, I want to just thank all of you who are here watching and listening and let you know that you can get this podcast in a couple of different ways. We do put up the video version of each week's podcast on our website. Just go to celebrationbarreview.com/ and then enter the episode number. This week it's 202. If you'd like to listen to your podcast, you can do that on Apple iTunes, on iHeartRadio, Spotify, just about any place that you get your podcasts. And be sure to check us out. Just do a search for the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. And of course, we always would love to have your honest rating and reviews. And we appreciate that so many of you share these episodes with friends and colleagues. The program and the series has just grown so much over the past 3 years and 200 episodes. And so we really appreciate all of that. But if it's your first time with us, welcome. We're really glad to have you here. Every Wednesday, I come to you with some news and information about the bar exam, hopefully a message or an interview that will inspire and lift you up. And today we've got a great interview. I'm going to be talking to a Florida bar taker who has just an extraordinary story. I tell my students the story of Calamity Jane, a student I had many years ago that had everything go wrong for her right before the bar exam. I'm thinking I should rewrite that to be Calamity Joni, because as you're going to hear in today's interview, Joni just went through an extraordinary series of events, going all the way back to when she was in law school and she kept falling asleep in classes. She thought it was because she was bored. She actually found out she had a sleep disorder. Later, when she decided to sit for the exam, she was not successful and she went completely away from the law, then came back a few years later, decided to jump in and take the Florida bar, and she ended up missing by just a couple of points. It was absolutely devastating to her. But she picked herself back up and she went back to take the exam in February of 2018. Well, right before that exam, she had a series of calamities that were pretty extraordinary. First, she was right in the eye of the storm, Hurricane Irma, that arrived in Florida just before the bar exam. And that was pretty horrible for her. And then she went to Ohio to visit her mom, as you're going to hear, and her mom had a heart attack while she was there right before the bar exam. Then Joni got her mom taken care of. She came back to Florida only to find that her partner had had a heart attack here in Florida, a stroke. And so suddenly she was in the hospital with him. And it was just extraordinary. And you'll hear in this story how Joni just refused to give up. She refused to let any of those prior misses or other events stop her. And she ended up scoring a 146 and passing by 10 points over the Florida bar exam requirement. It's really a great story. Very encouraging, very uplifting. I hope you'll stick around to hear that story in Joni's own words. Now, I do want to share with you, as always, that this week's episode is being brought to you by our free live webinar. It's called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. It's a look at the powerful, proven way to pass. And we'll be hosting that live webinar this Thursday, June 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 p.m. Pacific. I really encourage you to participate and join us. We're going to look at what successful bar takers do in order to pass the bar. We don't hide any, there's no hidden tricks up our sleeve. We don't play hide the law or hide the rule or do any of that kind of stuff. We're going to show you straight up what it takes to pass the exam. It's completely free, but you do need to register. And you can do that in one of a couple of ways. If you're watching today's podcast on video, just scroll down to the bottom of this page. There's a button there, and you can register that way. If you're listening to the webinar, there's a link in the show notes, and you can also go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com/webinar, so that's /webinar, and register there. Now, Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern does not work for your schedule. We certainly understand that, and so we offer the same content on an on-demand basis, and you'll see when you go to our webinar page that you have that option. You can select the on-demand version. It's the same great material. The only difference is I'm not live to answer your questions, but you can email them and we'll respond promptly. So whether it's Thursday night live at 7 p.m. or you're watching the on-demand version on your own schedule, make sure you check out this webinar. It's something you won't want to miss. Now, last week's episode, I talked briefly about how I hoped boot camp for our students was going to go well here in Celebration, Florida. Well, we're now past boot camp, and I can safely tell you it was a great success. We had a terrific weekend with some dedicated and excited and enthusiastic students in the Celebration Bar Review course. For 2 full days, we worked on photo reading skills for the multiple choice part, the essay, and the performance test. There was hands-on work, direct instruction. I was joined by Millicent St. Clair from Learning Strategies, probably the preeminent photo reading instructor in the world. It was an extraordinary opportunity. And we got some feedback from our students after it was done. The feedback was awesome. But one of the things they said is, you've got to add an extra day. And we just love what you're doing, and but also keep the class size small, because that hands-on instruction really matters. Well, we listened to that feedback, and I'm pleased to tell you right now that we are announcing our next boot camp. It will begin on November 30th, which is a Friday, extend through December 2nd, which is a Sunday in 2018. It'll be here in Celebration, Florida. Now, that first day, November 30th, is actually a bonus. It's going to be an essay writing workshop. This will be an opportunity to really drill into the essay writing formula that we teach. It will be hands-on instruction. I'm very excited about it. We're going to begin on Friday afternoon here in Celebration, just with essay writing. Then we'll do our 2-day photo reading boot camp without having to spend quite so much time on how the essay writing itself occurs. And we've put all that together in a terrific package. You can register for the 2 days of boot camp for only $750, or you can register for the 1 day of the essay writing workshop for $450, or you can register for both of them together for only $1,000. So there's a savings of $150. Now, we are going to limit our class size to 25 people. And so, as we have sold out the last 2 boot camps, we wanted to make this offer available right away. And so we're putting it up on our website at celebrationbarreview.com/bootcamp, BOOTCAMP, bootcamp. If you're interested, go there, check it out. There's lots of information, the schedule, the agenda, the hotel, where we're going to be meeting. All of that is there. I think you'll really be excited about it. And then if you're a Celebration Bar Review student, jump in and register for one or both of those sessions. Now, if you're not one of our registered students, unfortunately, we're not going to let you into the boot camp, but obviously there's still time to register with us and get involved and become a student, and then join us for a live boot camp. So I hope everybody will check that out. It's November 30th, Friday through December 2nd, Sunday, here in beautiful Celebration, Florida. So that's what's happening there. A couple of those announcements. Now, before we get to the interview, I do want to talk about a couple of other things that are happening in bar exam related news. One of the big pieces of information is the growth of the uniform bar exam. The UBE has been spreading across the country, and it's gaining momentum. In the last week, a couple of additional states have announced that they are switching to the UBE. The new total is now 33 states. That's an awful lot of jurisdictions. And it's good news for bar takers, because the UBE score is certainly more portable than any individual state score. So here are the new additions that have come up. Illinois, a big jurisdiction, announced that starting in July 2019, they are switching to the UBE. Rhode Island, not a big jurisdiction, but certainly locking down the Northeast now, is switching to the UBE beginning in February of 2019. This joins North Carolina and Maryland, who had announced previously that they would be switching. North Carolina will be switching to the UBE in February 2019. We get a lot of inquiries from North Carolina students. This is good news. Obviously, lots of North Carolina, South Carolina activity, and they're now going to be both UBE. Maryland will make their switch in July of 2019. They'd announced that earlier, but now they seem to be locking into the July 2019 exam date. And then a couple of weeks ago, Tennessee announced that they were switching to the UBE in February of 2019 as well. So those states, Illinois, Rhode Island, North Carolina, Maryland, and Tennessee, are the newest additions to the UBE. And of course, we've got all of that material, and we've worked with students in all of those states when they were not UBE. So it's really exciting now to see it switch over to UBE, and we can get rid of sort of the appendages of the state-specific material. So if you've been thinking about any of those jurisdictions, I would certainly look at the UBE dates and the states now, because simply taking the exam in any of those states would give you access potentially to now 33 states and jurisdictions. So it's really great news, I think, for bar takers. Also let you know that Texas is considering the UBE but has not made a decision yet. So Texas, I think, is next up on the draft board. There is no site that I have that Florida or California will ever join the UBE, so I don't think that's on the board at all. Georgia is another state that might go to the UBE at some point, but we're still a little ways away from that. So those are most of the big states now are coming into line, with the exception, obviously, of California and Florida. New York has been a UBE state for a long time. So yeah, it's definitely growing. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about before we get to our interview is an interesting thing that's going on in California. And of course, California, the place where the score is ridiculously high and no one can quite understand or explain it. We've been talking to a lot of people about what's going on in California, about the ridiculous jump. If you equate California's scores to every other jurisdiction, California requires, in effect, a 288. New York, for example, requires a 266 to pass. It's pretty hard to justify a 22-point difference between those two scores. So one of the things that the California bar examiners have done that I think comes under the heading of bandages is that they've started a pilot program on mindset. Now, don't misunderstand. We're all about mindset here at Celebration Bar Review, and we've been all about mindset for a very long time. I would say well over a decade now, with our work with Holosync audio meditation and paraliminal recordings and photo reading and just holistic approaches to studying. But the California bar examiners, late to the party, have decided that they're going to run a special experiment on bar repeaters to find out their mindset. They're going to send them a few emails right before the exam, and they're going to tell them to write their own bar exam stories. Well, this is all great news. We've been talking about writing a better story for years. In fact, I did an update to a really almost a classic video that I did called Bar Exam Piece, Writing a Better Story. And we're going to link to that in our show notes so that you can check it out. We think it's a great idea. However, one of the things we've learned is that you don't really change mindsets with just a few videos or a couple of emails. You really have to build relationships and you have to build trust. And so that's part of what we've tried to do within our course. And it's obviously, for us, worked out very effectively. I have my doubts about whether or not California's program is going to make much of a difference. I'm not sure that an inspirational email from someone you've never heard of and don't know a couple of weeks before the bar exam is really going to change your mindset. And so it's a really odd experiment. In addition to all of that, and you got to love this about California, they offered this program for no charge. However, they set the deadline to enroll in the program 4 days before results were released in California, which meant that people didn't know their results and they couldn't sign up for it. You gotta love the California examiners. They are so passive-aggressive sometimes, it's just quite extraordinary. In any event, we will be watching to see how that program works out, what other things that they've done. So far, they've pretty well cribbed most of our program with everything they've done. They've talked about mindset and writing better stories. They've talked about the motivational steps. I'm waiting for them to introduce photo reading. And when they do that, I'll know that they bought in all the way. So we will see what happens in California. If you're a Cal Bar taker and you're in that program, I'd love to hear how it goes for you, and certainly keep us informed there. All right, so that's what's happening in the world of the bar exam. It's never dull, always something new and exciting, and we can almost always thank the California bar examiners for giving us something to talk about. Well, I want to turn now to our interview with Joni. She was really wonderful to talk with. I think you're going to love her spirit and her enthusiasm and her literal ability to just not give up in the face of any challenge put in front of her. And it's a really, really exciting and wonderful story. And so let's go to our interview now with the newest member of the Florida Bar, Joni Mazzola. Have the person that has probably the best ever celebration picture after passing the bar, Joni Mazzola. Hi, Joni. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. How are you, Jackson?
Well, good. You want to show people the sign that you made for your picture, because it's
Yes.
so good.
Sure. I wish I would have actually printed out the picture that I sent you, but
Yeah, because the picture's great, but there it is.
can you see it?
I can't stop smiling because I passed the Florida bar exam. Well, congratulations.
I went out that night and I showed this to everybody I knew and didn't know.
Oh, cool. That must have been fun.
It was fun.
Awesome. Well, this was not an easy journey for you, was it?
Anything but.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons I was so excited to be able to get you on the show to tell your story, because I know some of the story. I don't think I know it all, but it was really an extraordinary battle for you to get here against some pretty significant odds, and you did it. So why don't we back up, tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got into law, and then how you got out of law and how you came back to it, okay?
Well, it was nothing. It's been nothing less than a Herculean effort from the get. I guess I'll start. I graduated high school. Valedictorian. I want to go to college. I want to go to law school. I mean, I have it written in my yearbook. So I certainly did that. Went to college, graduated, went to law school. I actually did graduate. This is me.
There you go. I love it. Nice picture. Yeah.
Yeah. This is actually from 2004. That's when I graduated law school. So the thing about law school was, well, and actually my entire life is, I slept through a lot of my classes, to be quite honest. And that was nothing new. That had always worked for me. I did it all through high school, all through college, and always did very, very well. But law school, not so much. A bit more challenging than I was used to. So I struggled with trying to keep up with the assignments. I was just very tired, and I've always been known as a heavy sleeper. Fine. So it wasn't until 6 years after law school that I realized I have a very rare sleep disorder. It's basically a mild form of narcolepsy.
Yeah.
So, and of course, when I get this diagnosis, I think, I wonder if law school would have been a bit easier, if I had done a bit better, if I had known this then. But by that time, law school was way behind me. I had decided law was not for me. Apparently it bored me to death, or bored me to sleep is what I assumed, and went on to do other things. So after the diagnosis, I sort of got a new lease on life, did other things. I wasn't quite ready to tackle the bar exam. Because just of sheer fear of failure. And so instead, what I did was I moved to Florida and bought a restaurant, because everybody knows how those are usually really successful, right?
Yeah, as a failed restaurant owner, I can appreciate the irony of this, but go ahead, tell us more.
Well, it was on my bucket list. It was something I wanted to do, and I finally got up the nerve to do it. And thankfully, I actually was in that small percentage of restaurateurs who actually made it go. And I had it for about 4 years, and won 20-some Reader's Choice Awards. And by that point, I had decided, and my back had decided for me, that it was time to scratch that off my bucket list and sell the restaurant. So I did that, and I thought, okay, it's been, at that point, it had been, 12 years? Almost going to 13. And I thought, okay, it's time to address unfinished business. So after taking my long, over decade hiatus, I finally decided to study for the bar exam. So here I am in Florida, and I went to law school in Ohio, and of course didn't know anything about Florida law. Really didn't know much about law at all from what I felt, because I slept through a lot of my classes the first time around, and that had been so long ago. So basically, I went into this review course almost as if I had never gone to law school at all. And so I'm combing through articles, combing the web, and your program pops up in an article I had read, and I wish I could have remembered who the attorney was. It was a Tampa-based attorney who had referenced Celebration Bar Review. And so that's when I started doing a little digging. And I don't know if you remember, we had a conversation back, it was, I think, literally a week before I sold my restaurant, September 2016. And I said, can I do this? Is this even possible? And of course, you talked me into it. And next thing I knew, I was... Okay, like, since when does anything, unconventional hold me back? Okay, let's go ahead. Let's do it. So, and if at any time you want to stop me, feel free.
No, this is a great story. Keep going.
So, I am very old school. I like printed things. I like to make notes. So I ordered the printed version, and it arrives just a few days, I think, after my final day at the restaurant. So I sell my restaurant on September 30th, big benchmark day. And then 2 days after that, my boyfriend Michael's mother passes away. Mm. And then, so we're clamoring over that. And then not really much time to mourn, because guess what? Hurricane Matthew's coming. So all of the things that I had schlepped into our garage from the restaurant, had to be reorganized so we can actually get the cars in there. Yeah. So all these things are going on. We have no electric for, 2 or 3 days. I can't get online to hear your lectures. I'm literally like Abe Lincoln reading my little books by candlelight, and just trying to basically get an idea, get familiar with the course. So fast forward through the hurricane, thankfully made it through that. Then there's a trip to New York for the wake, 2 more trips to New York for 2 weddings. I mean, it was like 2 weddings and a funeral. And then I've got bronchitis because I've been traveling in those, airtight pathogen containers that they call airplanes.
I've heard of those, yes.
Yes. So I've got bronchitis. I'm trying to finish up my bar application by November 15th. Meanwhile, my mother and sister are coming down, and then it's Thanksgiving, and it was just, basically, I didn't get into my real hardcore studies until December.
Right.
So, 14 years out of law school, and I've got, less than 3 months here to study. So that was, December, January, February, day and night. I didn't work at all during that time. So I go take the exam, and what a shamble. Like, what was I even thinking? There's no way I could have been prepared for that. But I guess, I had to see what it was about. So I actually got my results back, and I missed it by 3 points.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable.
And the funniest part was, and I didn't tell you this at the time, because I thought he could either find this very funny or very obnoxious. So, I didn't get through all the lectures that I wanted to get through before the exam. And, so here I am, I'm making the 3-hour drive to Tampa, and I'm literally listening to Florida criminal procedure for the very first time in my car. Now, I don't know if you recall, but when we had the conference after I got my results back, I think you had said that I had been like one of the absolute highest scoring applicants from your course in criminal procedure for Florida, for the Florida portion of the exam, which I found to be hysterical. And that should be a testament to how great your lectures are, apparently.
Well, either that or, I don't even know what it is. Means you didn't fall asleep. That's good. Now that I know this sleeping thing a little bit more, it scares me to think that I might have been a third party defendant in a tort hypo. Student falls asleep while driving, listening to dull bar review lecturer. Film at 11.
I am been seeking treatment for many years now. I think we're all safe.
Okay. All right. So you go through, you have this experience. And I remember one of the really amazing things was, given all the things that had happened, I thought coming within 3 points was actually a pretty remarkable result. I mean, it was disappointing, obviously, but I think sometimes we have to measure what the start point is, what the challenges are, and then sort of see where we're at. And one of the things about you, Joni, is your spirit. You are just sort of one of those undefeatable kind of people. And you're not one that sort of sits there and says, well, my life sucks and this is terrible and everything's bad. You're, as people obviously can tell already, you're very engaging. And so you were just like, okay, we're going to go. I mean, go do it. So pick up the story from there. Go ahead.
So, and I said, and if any time I bore you, please just cut me off.
I think our audience is going to be thrilled to hear this story.
So, I take the exam in February, and by this point, I now have 3 weeks to study for the MPRE.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, professional responsibility lectures were 2 of the lectures I had not gotten to before the exam. So I'm cramming in all the ethics I can possibly take for this exam. Thankfully, I passed that. And by the time that the February exam results come out in April, and I find out that, again, I'm 3 points shy, I'm thinking, okay, fine, I'm ready to go back at it, hardcore, early this time, right? Wrong. Because the Florida Board of Bar Examiners had many, many questions about my application, which is something I want to get to a little bit later, just to touch on very quickly as advice to future test takers. Mm-hmm. So anyway, now I'm spending quite a bit of time gathering documents and meeting these requests. So there's going some of my study time, and now I'm working part-time. I'm volunteering at the hospital. I've got all these other things now. And before I realize it, it's mid-May, so I've got 2 months now. I'm like, God, I have the best intentions. So I've got 2 months. Okay, I've got to make some decisions, some hardcore decisions, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to focus primarily on the MBE. Rather than, fail both of these equally, I'm going to at least try to knock one out if I can, and if I do okay on the other one, all right, great. And so that was sort of my strategy for that. And the funny thing was, and we could do a whole other podcast just on my experiences in Tampa alone. I don't know, I have a cloud over me for some reason. But long story short, in Tampa, the night before the MBE, I am disturbed to discover there are cockroaches in my room. You can't make this up, Jackson. You can't make this up. I actually took pictures because I thought no one would believe this. So now, and this is like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. There's no way I'm switching rooms. No way I'm switching rooms. There's no way I'm drinking any coffee out of the little coffee pot.
I think we're clear on that, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I can't go back to sleep because I'm just so skeezed by the whole thing. So I got so little sleep for the second day for the MBE portion of the exam. But by the afternoon, I'm literally dozing off in the exam. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To the point where I look up and I'm thinking, I don't remember answering the last 3 questions, but I've got them filled in, and they look right, so I'm moving forward. Amazingly, I passed the MBE. I am still stunned, shocked, passed, was ecstatic, and I missed passing the entire exam by 1 point.
Right.
So that was delightful.
So just now for folks to catch this, we're under 3 points. Now we pass the MBE. We're under the whole exam by 1 point. Okay, so now you're ready to go back, but this time you're going to sit only for the Florida part of the exam, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens now?
So a little pressure off. I'm thinking, okay, great. Now I'm thinking I am going to start way ahead of schedule this time. I'm like, okay, game on, half down, have to go. This is great. You get a nice head start. So as I'm thinking this, of course, we are closing on a house, and we get to move in the night before a little storm. Maybe you've heard of it, passed through Florida, called Hurricane Irma.
Yeah.
So, yeah, night before, trying to get everything in, just shove it wherever you can find a spot. And this time around, and thankfully no major damage, but this time around, no electric for 8 days.
Yeah. It was pretty awful. For those that don't know, I mean, Irma went right, the eye of the storm actually passed right over our home here. It was not supposed to hit us. It was supposed to go somewhere else, hit us, and then kept going. And, you were caught up in it. And we had no power in Florida generally for about a week, most of the state. Okay.
Everything backed up. Yeah. So all of the flooring guys, the painters, they're also backed up. So no furniture is going in. Talking about air mattress for 2-3 weeks. Everything's in boxes. So yeah, I can't even find my life. There's like paper clips with, I don't know, potato chips. Like everything's just like crammed in. So that gets put on hold. And then of course I get another request from the Florida Board of Bar Examiners meanwhile to clarify something else in the application. Spending quite a bit of time on that. And then I actually go up north to Ohio to get some of my furniture from my mom's house. I'd had there for a while. While I'm there, she has a stroke.
Yeah.
So pretty devastating. Thank goodness. No paralysis. She was very, very fortunate, but still very scary. Her blood pressure was very unstable and still is being monitored even at this point. But just a very big scare came out of nowhere. So dealing with that, and then literally 2 weeks later, Michael has a heart attack.
Right.
So this is all.
So let's just get this in context. There's a hurricane, there's a stroke, there's a heart attack in a period of a month, right?
Roughly, maybe a little over a month, yeah.
Okay, and it's before the bar exam.
Oh yes, this is before. This is before November.
Okay. So at that point, did you consider maybe I should just quit, give up?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay. July, next July, here I come. But of course, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, all right, the longer I wait, and if I don't pass, obviously I'm going to lose that passing MBE score, and I'm going to lose my passing MPRE score.
Right.
All these pressures are turning. And so Michael is in the hospital. He's in ICU for 5 days. And he also owns a business. So I'm trying to, a graphic design business, which I know nothing about. I'm trying to go answer his emails, go to the hospital, unpack. And then I became caretaker for several weeks. And all of these things are coming into play. Then, of course, Thanksgiving, Christmas. It was January 3rd before I finally got to unpack my books, and actually dig back in.
Okay. So I think a lot of people at this point would have said, it's not in the cards for me, at least not this exam time. Too much happening, too many things going on. And one of the things I've discovered over the years is that there are really two broad categories of students. There are the people that are easily distracted, and virtually anything that's unusual, disruptive, causes them to stop and defer. And then there are people who are just determined. They're just going to run through walls. It doesn't matter. It's just they're going to keep going. And you're obviously in that second category because you decided in January you were going to put your head down and just go make this thing happen. Yeah. So now, how do you do that? You've only got a couple of months to make it happen. So what did you do?
I drank a lot of Mountain Dew.
Okay. Thank you, Mountain Dew.
Yeah. Yeah, the 4 hours, 5 hours a day, that's out the window. It's like full speed ahead as much as I can with everything else going on. So obviously I knew that essays were my weak point. And I knew that from the get. I knew that from 14 years ago. That was one of the few things from law school I did remember. So that was where I did find, and we didn't have very many conferences, but it's one thing that I did find that was helpful, and one thing that I did make sure to contact you with was the essays. And I did find the FLA very helpful, but as you know, I struggled with that as well. I think the biggest advantage that learning that method gave me was just being able to get a perspective on this huge, massive word problem, basically. Just start breaking things down into bite-sized pieces. But I don't know if you recall, but my problem was my answers were very, very concise.
Yes, they were short, folks. She just didn't say much.
Basically, like fact. Plaintiff did X. Law. This is a breach. Analysis. Breaches are bad. The end.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty good indicate. Yeah, that's a pretty good capsule of some of that early writing. I agree. Okay.
and of course, and you were somewhat diplomatic and with me, and well, you're a great writer. Everything is written very eloquently, but you basically, in so many words, you're saying you're about 1,000 words short. Really, I mean, it was at least 800 words short. So I'm thinking, okay, how it was so hard for me. I felt like I don't know why I struggled with it, but I always felt like that. Getting more analysis in felt redundant. So the way that I got around that was thinking, okay, how can you add more words, and how can you make this still be meaningful? And I went back through, read old essay answers, the model answers, and I'm reading what they've got, and I'm thinking, reading what some of the things that you had in the books, and I'm thinking, okay. Here's the only way that I'm going to be able to get past this writer's block, apparently, that I have. I need to go into reporter Joni mode. I need to answer the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I have to think of it that way. And that will get me to write. And sure enough, I finally made a breakthrough. So, who are the parties? Bam. What's the legal principle? Statute of frauds. When does this apply? Why do we have it? What's the policy behind it? And how does it help or hurt? And if I followed that methodology, then I couldn't stop writing.
Okay.
But for some reason, I just had a block up until that point. And the way that I got comfortable with it was thinking, write like you're writing it for your neighbor. Write like you're writing it for your cousin, for your uncle, for somebody who's not in law school, who doesn't know anything about the law. And once I did that, then I was fine.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think people have to find those breakthrough moments. They have to find the way that they can integrate what we're teaching them and internalize it and make it their own. And I think you did that. So now you're focused on the Florida essays, Florida multiple choice only, the one day of the test. You go back to Tampa, hopefully to a cockroach-free hotel this time.
Yes.
Okay. You sleep better, and you take the test. What did it feel like going in to take the test this time?
I had a lot more confidence, but I think because at this point I felt as if I was. This was all I was going to know or hold at the same time, all at once. It felt like I had to just let it out, or I'm going to start forgetting the things that I've learned. So, mixed emotions. And of course, it didn't help that day they're having all these software issues, and yeah. So
again, for those of you who don't know, the bar exam soft had technical problems again for the second time in like the last 5 or 6 years. And this was a major problem in some jurisdictions and for some people's computers, and it wasn't loading properly, and there was an update to the software, and it was just a mess. And they actually started late in Tampa because they were trying to fix people's computers. So the whole day was really kind of a disaster, which is becoming more the norm and less the exception. So that kind of adds to everybody's stress, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly did, especially when I had a late checkout that day so that I wouldn't have to pay for an extra night. So now I am past that time. So I spent my lunch break, number one, trying to use the restroom. Everybody who takes the bar exam should know, good luck with that.
Yeah.
You know, everybody flocks. You literally, at least I didn't have time. I used every single minute. And trying to run the half a mile down the Riverwalk to my hotel so that I can get my stuff out, check out, and get back to the convention center. So yeah, that was a bit of stress right there in that half hour.
Wow.
So,
okay.
But I did feel much better. I felt much more confident than I had previously. And I had finally, at this point, really refined the Florida common law differences. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. That is one piece of advice while I'm thinking of it for bar takers. Know the differences. Mm-hmm. Because, and it's not apparent. The way the questions are worded, you know that common law is one way and Florida's the other way, but you need to remember which one is which.
Yeah, it helps.
And that was a tough lesson learned. But and what was hilarious was that I had just listened again. I think that was the only lecture that I listened to twice of yours was the Florida. And sure enough, 2 points that you hit on were on the exam.
Okay. Yay me.
Yeah,
all right.
Yay you.
Okay. So now exam is done and Michael's feeling better, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mom is getting better.
Yes.
Power has been restored, although I have to say Florida still looks pretty miserable in places from Irma. So, okay. And now you're in the waiting period. There's about a 6-week waiting period after the exam is over before results come out. What's your mindset during those 6 weeks? What are you thinking about, or what's crossing your mind at this point?
I remember looking across the dinner table at Michael, and at one point randomly saying, I bet if I go online now and book my room for July, I'll probably get a better rate.
That's what we like, a really positive attitude. Okay. So
I'm a realist. So I'm trying not to think about it because there's really no way of knowing. I felt really good about the first and third questions. The second question I skipped, I came back to, and I struggled with that for a while. And then finally, at the 11th hour, light bulb went off. And I thought, oh my gosh, I read about this. I just never actually did a practice question about it. So I finally got a moment of clarity, and I'm ferociously writing. And of course, time is called. And I'm thinking, I'm praying, did I write enough? Just enough to get me by. So that's the thought that's in my head. Meanwhile, I know, obviously, what date the results are going to be released. I don't tell a single soul. No, not even Michael. Nobody knows. In fact, I didn't even tell my mother I had taken the exam.
Okay.
So this is, completely, mystery. And I'm thinking if I get good news, everybody will know. If I get bad news, nobody has to know. So, I'm waiting and honestly just kept myself very busy and basically picked out a lot of home furnishings that I had not gotten the opportunity to do earlier. I mean, if you'll notice, we're in my office. I still have nothing on the wall.
Nice. Okay, good. All right. So now it's results day. Tell me about that.
Well, the morning dragged by very slowly, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't want Mike to know that I'm stressing over this because if I have a bad day, I don't want to ruin his day. So I'm staying very busy, He goes to the office, and meanwhile, we're putting in a pool. So everything is nice and quiet, and then all of a sudden, 8:57, there are 3 dump trucks lined up in the driveway. There's an excavator in the backyard, and all of these guys asking me, for direction for this or for that. And I'm thinking, all I can think of is, I just want to get to my laptop. Could you just leave me alone? I just want to get to my laptop. So 9:07, I finally get everybody away. I go check the laptop, and I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm reading and I'm scrolling through this endless list of numbers. And I look over and I'm following over and I'm thinking, pass. Thinking, is that my number? Now I'm doubting whether I've looked up the right number. I come in to double check. I'm looking, thinking, I think it is. But I want to print it out just to be sure. So I can take this is how much I'm like, I've got to be sure. I'm going back into the office to the printer. Michael is back home, and it's like he stopped me, like red-handed. And he says, what's the matter? And I said, I think I passed the bar exam, but I don't know for sure. So we're like scrambling to get the numbers, and then the doorbell rings. It's the alarm system guy. He answers the door, and he's like, we'll be right with you. Closes the door back. We're ferociously looking, and all of a sudden we both see it jumping up for joy, screaming, and finally coming down off that high. And I said, maybe we should let the alarm system guy.
That's great. That's great.
So it was the most surreal feeling, and I couldn't wait to call my mom and to give her the good news. And it was the best feeling. It was something
great.
That I had dreaded for 14 years. And to defeat it was absolutely wonderful.
That's awesome. And then you took your picture and you went out and you took photos and showed your sign to everybody on the street.
Yes.
That's awesome. You want to talk a little bit about the Florida application process. It's a bear. It's really, really hard. And it's really designed to keep people from applying in many respects. What would you advise people about that? Because you got to do it. Everybody's got to go through it.
Right. Most people would say, apply as early as you possibly can, which I think is true. But, apply by the deadlines, apply by when they want you to apply. It would not behoove you to apply much, much earlier because they really don't I don't think, it's my impression that they don't really take your application seriously until, you're getting closer to being, a competitor almost, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So my biggest advice is if there is anything on your application, and I'm not even talking about anything criminal, the biggest thing that I had discovered was they give you so many lines to answer the question, and I'm thinking, I need to be concise. Answer the question, right? These are the lines, answer the question, get on with it. They don't want to hear whining or explanations, or that is not the case. Yeah. They want, if there is a good reason, or even a bad reason, why the A happened or B happened, explain it. Yeah. And if you're at all confused or worried or you need help, get an attorney.
Yeah.
And I was shocked as I'm reading online and I'm reading horror stories, people going in front of the board for investigative hearings. And apparently it, for some people, it's almost like just being in a firing range. You get all these questions shot at you. And a lot of times people aren't expecting it and they're put on the spot. It's a very adversarial proceeding.
Correct.
So reading all of that before I had gotten too far into the bar application process, I had already submitted it, but before I had heard too many things back, I had found an attorney, and she's absolutely wonderful. Anybody in Florida, I highly recommend Elizabeth Conan. She is out of Orlando. Google her. She is stellar. I cannot say enough wonderful things about this woman.
Yeah, it's a specialty to be a bar admissions attorney. It's one of the things people ask me all the time, and I have to explain that because of my license agreement with the examiners, I can't give that advice. I am expressly prohibited from giving that advice. But there are attorneys in every state who specialize in bar admissions. And if you're in a situation where you think you might have to explain something or get called into a hearing, you are much better off to have counsel than not, even though you've been to law school and presumably, you think you can handle it yourself. It's a whole different world. So I think that's good advice. And yeah, we'll link up for Elizabeth's information because I think she is a good one.
Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
even the most what would seemingly be the most innocent things. For instance, I had filed a tax return extension the first year that I owned my business. That came up as an issue. Why did I file it wasn't late. And that was the question. Why, and I never filed, so I answered no. They came back and asked, why didn't you report this? Why didn't you disclose this tax extension? Because in my mind, it wasn't late.
Yeah.
So I had to go through, so unless you've led a completely Puritan life and you've not done anything, chances are you will find yourself explaining something. So she's wonderful as far as giving you guidance on what to say, what not to say. Completely wonderful. And thank God I got to avoid that entire unpleasant investigative hearing. So
that's cool. Well, it's been really quite a journey for you to get to this point. And I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of the fact that you hung in there. You had things that would have derailed, I think, a lot of folks. A lot of people would have given up earlier. They would have said, it's just not going to happen for me. There's the universe is telling me don't do this. That's not you. And I'm so glad you stuck with it. It was worth it, wasn't it?
Oh, it absolutely was. It absolutely was. And what I just want to tell people out there is that no matter how little you think you know about law or how worried you are that you won't pass, let me just tell you, after 14 years and 2 hurricanes, 2 weddings, a funeral, a stroke, a heart attack, and a 25-pound weight loss because of the stress of it all, if I can pass it after studying for 7 months, anybody can. And anybody can with celebration.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Appreciate it.
Absolutely true. And you have a very wonderful program, and you absolutely deserve all of the accolades that anyone can offer you.
Well, thanks. It's, the fun part for us is getting to have these moments and getting to do these interviews and sharing stories, because I know that your story is going to inspire a lot of people. There are going to be a lot of people who go, I thought my life kind of was miserable in places, but, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I can do this. And, I think, you just have a certain approach to life that is so wonderful, and an enthusiasm and a joy. And what a great member of the bar you're going to be. I'm excited to see what your career how your career path unfolds, what happens. I mean, you really kind of got a whole new life now after you've left Ohio. So it's pretty exciting, isn't it?
It is. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, you are welcome. And thank you for sharing. Is there anything that we haven't talked about here that you wanted to share with people? Because I don't want to stop you, but I do appreciate all of the insight.
Great to get to know you. And you inspire people. You push people. Your lectures are wonderful. For what it's worth, my favorite lecture is the criminal law lecture with the Once Upon a Time characters, because it works. Mm-hmm. It works. I mean, I'm working through a problem thinking, all right, what about Prince Charming? When is he reckless? When is he not reckless? And Pan and Hook, like how does that, the transferred intent? These are the things that stick. That was, for me, by far, the most memorable lecture. It was wonderful.
Well, great. Thank you. I love that show, too.
You have many great lectures, but that one in particular really stuck. And that covered a lot of ground and a lot of tedious ground. And it was so well presented. And you should know how inspiring your lectures are.
Well, thank you. No, I think we've covered the highlights here, and I know that people will want to reach out and connect with you. You've been part of our online community, and I hope you'll continue to do that and be available to folks. But I really appreciate it, and I hope that life calms down a little bit. I hope that good things are in your future, that pool is good for hanging out, and the new house and all of the good stuff. We're going to be watching your legal career, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see what you do, when we go from the restaurant to the law office. So
I can't wait to see either.
Yeah, it should be fun. Well, thank you, Joni. It's been great. Congratulations again. And to all of you who've been watching and listening, thanks for being with us. I hope that you were as inspired today as I was. And we'll be back again soon with our next interview. So for now, bye-bye, everybody. Well, that's our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Joni as much as I enjoyed talking to her. She's just a lot of fun. And wow, what a great story of inspiration, isn't it? We just want to remind everybody that coming up this Thursday night, How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. It's the webinar that can change your life. We'll show you the powerful, proven way to pass. You can register for free by going to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar, and then we'll see you live on Thursday, the 14th of June at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific. Also, don't forget, you can register now for our boot camp coming up in November 30th through December 2nd, and you can do that by going to celebrationbarreview.com/bootcamp. And that's it for this week. We'll see you again next week. Hope everybody has a great study week, and we'll look forward to seeing all of you along the extra mile. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.